Star Wars and E.T. George Lucas and Steven Spielberg made a pact to include each other's characters in their massive sci-fi franchises. The connection began when Spielberg included a child wearing a Yoda costume in E.T. the Extraterrestrial in 1982, which E.T. recognizes and responds to by saying, "Home." Lucas reciprocated in Star Wars Episode I, The Phantom Menace, in 1999 during the Galactic Senate scene. In the lower left of the Senate, 3 members of E.T.'s species, known as Asogians, are visible in a floating pod, shouting for a vote of no confidence. The lead Asogian senator is officially named Greblipes, which is Spielberg spelled backward. In the non-canon novel E.T. The Book of the Green Planet, it is mentioned that E.T.'s species has explored other galaxies, potentially confirming they traveled to the Star Wars galaxy far, far away. This is the grandfather of sci-fi crossovers, establishing a friendly rivalry between the two biggest directors of the 80s, and officially linking cinema's 2 biggest Alien franchises. Alien and Blade Runner. A specific Easter egg on the Prometheus Blu-ray explicitly links Ridley Scott's 2 biggest sci-fi universes. The connection is found in the Peter Weyland files on the 2012 Prometheus home release. A memo written by Peter Weyland, played by Guy Pearce, dictates his resentment toward a mentor and long-departed competitor. Weyland writes that this mentor ran his company like a god on top of a pyramid, overlooking a city of angels, a clear reference to the Tyrell Corporation pyramid in Los Angeles. Weyland criticizes the mentor for using genetic abominations, meaning replicants, and implanting them with false memories, noting it literally blew up in the old man's face. This refers to Eldon Tyrell's death in Blade Runner in 1982, where Roy Batty crushes his skull and eyes. The memo suggests Weyland synthesized the androids, including David, Ash, and Bishop, specifically to avoid the mistakes Tyrell made with biological replicants. This moves beyond fan theory into Word of God territory, as Ridley Scott, who directed both Alien and Blade Runner, approved this backstory, effectively merging the 2 most influential cyberpunk and horror universes, Soldier and Blade Runner. The 1998 Kurt Russell film Soldier is technically a sidequel to Blade Runner. Screenwriter David Peoples wrote both Blade Runner and Soldier. In the film, Sergeant Todd 3465, played by Kurt Russell, has his service record displayed on a screen. His service record lists the Battle of Tannhauser Gate and the Shoulder of Orion, the exact locations Roy Batty mentions in his Tears in Rain monologue. Peoples has stated in interviews he wrote Soldier as occurring in the same universe, with Todd being a precursor to the replicant program. While Soldier was a critical failure, this detail canonizes the battles Batty spoke of, proving they were real military conflicts involving human and engineered hybrid soldiers. Predator 2 and Alien. Before Alien vs. Predator was a movie, it was a prop hidden in a trophy case. In the climax of Predator 2 in 1990, Danny Glover enters the Predator ship. A trophy wall is visible in the background for approximately 2 seconds. Among the skulls is a distinct xenomorph skull from the Alien franchise. Effects legend Stan Winston decided to include it as an inside joke between the production teams. This single prop sparked the entire AVP comic book, video game, and film franchise. This is the rare instance where a 2-second visual Easter egg spawned an entire spin-off multimedia franchise that ran for decades. Prey and Predator 2. The acclaimed 2022 film Prey pays off a setup established 32 years prior. At the end of Predator 2 in 1990, the elder Predator gives Mike Harrigan, played by Danny Glover, an antique flintlock pistol. The pistol is engraved Raphael Adelini, 1715. In Prey in 2022, set in 1719, the main character Naru fights a French fur trapper. The trapper is revealed to be Raphael Adelini, and Naru takes his pistol. She uses this exact pistol to fight the feral predator. This closes the loop on how the predator species acquired the gun. They took it from Naru or her tribe after the events of Prey, but before Predator 2. This is a masterful piece of continuity management that rewarded eagle-eyed fans who remembered the inscription from the 1990 film. Firefly and Alien. Joss Whedon's Firefly contains a blink and you miss it nod to the mega corporation from Alien. In the pilot episode Serenity, during the Battle of Serenity Valley flashback, Mal Reynolds, played by Nathan Fillion, uses an anti-aircraft gun. The heads-up display clearly shows the Weyland-Yutani logo in the top center. Joss Whedon wrote Alien Resurrection, likely inspiring the inclusion. This Easter egg suggests the alliance in Firefly could be the eventual evolution or competitor of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. Star Trek and Star Wars. J.J. Abrams snuck a Star Wars icon into his Star Trek reboot years before he directed The Force Awakens. During the scene where the Enterprise arrives at Vulcan to find it destroyed by the Narada, as the ship maneuvers through the debris field, R2-D2 is briefly visible floating among the wreckage. This was an ILM digital artist joke inserted during post-production, a fun visual gag that foreshadowed Abrams' eventual jump from the Trek franchise to directing Star Wars Episode 7. By the way, if you're enjoying this so far, I post videos like this regularly. I'd really appreciate if you subscribed. Terminator 2 and The Abyss. James Cameron reused his own fictional oil company to link his ocean thriller with his robot apocalypse. In The Abyss in 1989, the underwater drilling rig is owned by the corporation Benthic Petroleum. In Terminator 2 Judgment Day in 1991, also directed by Cameron, the gas station where Sarah, John, and the T-800 stop to patch up balloons has Benthic Petroleum logos on the pumps. Benthic is a scientific term referring to the lowest level of a body of water, the benthic zone. This establishes that Cameron views his films, excluding perhaps Avatar, as taking place in a shared, grounded reality. Cloverfield and Super 8. J.J. Abrams uses a fictional frozen drink brand to mark his monstrous territory. The drink Slusho appears prominently in Cloverfield, where Jason wears a Slusho t-shirt. In the viral marketing, Slusho contains a secret ingredient called seabed's nectar, found by deep-sea drilling. In Super 8, in 2011, the Slusho brand appears in the convenience store. Both films also feature the fictional Japanese drilling company Tagruato. In Star Trek in 2009, Uhura orders a Slusho at the bar. This is a prime example of an ARG, an alternate reality game, bleeding into the actual films, creating a loose, bad robot multiverse connected by corporate branding. Spy Kids and Machete. The violent vigilante Machete is canonically the uncle of the Spy Kids. Danny Trejo plays Isidore Machete Cortez in the Spy Kids movies, acting as the estranged uncle to Junie and Carmen. He uses spy gadgets in Spy Kids that are similar to his gear in the R-rated Machete films. Director Robert Rodriguez confirmed they are the same character, but exist in alternate universes, similar to a multiverse concept. In Spy Kids, he is a loving uncle. In Machete, he is a violent killer. But the character history, including his federale background, remains consistent. This is a bizarre crossover between a PG-rated children's franchise and an R-rated exploitation film series. Guardians of the Galaxy and Slither. James Gunn hid the monster from his directorial debut inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In Guardians of the Galaxy in 2014, the Collector's Museum on Nowhere is filled with containment pods. One pod clearly contains the red alien slugs from Gunn's 2006 horror comedy Slither. Gunn confirmed this was a nod to his first movie. This technically means the parasitic aliens from Slither exist within the MCU cosmos, likely as a species the Collector gathered. Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars. R2-D2 and C-3PO visited Earth thousands of years ago according to Indiana Jones. In Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1981, during the Well of Souls scene, on a pillar next to Indy as he uncovers the Ark, there is a hieroglyph clearly depicting R2-D2 and C-3PO. Additionally, Jock's seaplane at the start of the film has the registration ID OB-CPO, referencing Obi-Wan and C-3PO, another Lucas and Spielberg crossover that implies the droids visited ancient Egypt, fitting the ancient astronaut theories often associated with the Ark. WALL-E and Toy Story. The company that destroyed the Earth in WALL-E has been powering Pixar childhoods for decades. The megacorporation By and Large, or BNL, is responsible for the trash that covers Earth in WALL-E. In Toy Story 3, Buzz Lightyear's batteries are explicitly branded BNL. In Toy Story 4, the antique store features a BNL sign. This connects to the Pixar theory, suggesting Toy Story takes place in the early days of the corporate takeover that eventually leads to the WALL-E apocalypse. It adds a sinister undertone to the toys, implying they are powered by the same monopoly that eventually forces humanity off the planet. Life and Venom. For a few months in 2017, the internet was convinced the movie Life was a secret prequel to Venom. Fans theorized the alien Calvin in Life was actually the Venom symbiote. The theory exploded because Life writers Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick had previously worked on a Venom script, though they didn't write the final 2018 movie. A shot of a crowd in the Life trailer looked identical to a shot from Spider-Man 3. However, the theory was officially shot down by director Daniel Espinosa and the studios Sony and Columbia. The theory was so prevalent that many fans still mistakenly believe they are connected. This is an important false alarm to correct common misconceptions in the sci-fi community. The Mist and the Dark Tower. The monsters in The Mist aren't just aliens. They are interdimensional beings from Stephen King's Dark Tower universe. In the film The Mist in 2007, the disaster is caused by the Arrowhead Project opening a window to another dimension. In Stephen King's lore, this dimension is Todash space, the void between worlds filled with Lovecraftian monsters. In the Dark Tower movie in 2017, the mist itself appears as a barrier between worlds. The painting Thomas Jane is working on at the start of The Mist is explicitly a poster for the Dark Tower, depicting Roland the Gunslinger standing before the tower. This confirms that The Mist depicts Athene, a weak spot in reality described in the Dark Tower books, a perfect closer that connects a cult classic monster movie to a massive literary multiverse, adding cosmic horror weight to the film's events. Toy Story and The Shining. Pixar's family-friendly franchise contains multiple references to Stephen King's horror masterpiece hidden throughout several of the films. Director Lee Unkrich is a massive fan of The Shining and has included Easter eggs across the Toy Story movies. In Toy Story in 1995, Sid's house features a carpet pattern that matches the iconic Overlook Hotel carpet design. The carpet was designed by production designer Ralph Eggleston, though the intentional Shining connection is disputed by director Lee Unkrich, who noted the decision was made before he joined the project. In Toy Story 3 in 2010, the number 237 appears 3 times, on a security camera labeled Model Overlook R237, on the garbage truck license plate reading RM237, and in the username Velocistar237 that Trixie messages online. The security room at Sunnyside Daycare contains an intercom similar to the one Wendy Torrance uses in The Shining. A tissue box in the same room has the Overlook carpet pattern. Sunnyside's janitor is named Mr. Tony, which fans have noted matches the name of Danny Torrance's imaginary friend from The Shining. In Toy Story 4 in 2019, the song Midnight, the Stars and You by Ray Noble plays on a record player in the antique shop, the same song that closes The Shining during the photograph scene. Unkrich runs a website dedicated to analyzing The Shining, where he has documented extensive research about the film. This represents one of the most extensive cross-genre Easter egg campaigns in cinema history, with a director inserting horror references into beloved children's films as a personal tribute to the movie that inspired his filmmaking career. Independence Day and Stargate. The alien invasion blockbuster may be connected to the ancient Egyptian sci-fi adventure through a potentially hidden character reference. Both films were created by the same duo, Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich. In the Independence Day official novelization in 1996, a character named Dr. D. Jackson is mentioned. Dr. Jackson is a scientist working to study captured alien technology at Area 51. Fans have speculated this may reference Dr. Daniel Jackson from Stargate in 1994, also played by James Spader, who specialized in ancient languages and was recruited for the Stargate program. In Stargate SG-1 episode Politics, Daniel Jackson makes a sarcastic reference to Independence Day, joking about defeating the Goa'uld by uploading a virus into the mothership. Jay Akavone, who played Major Kowalski in the Stargate franchise, appears uncredited in Independence Day as an Area 51 guard. While this connection suggests Daniel Jackson may have been working on alien technology at Area 51 before the Stargate program, the link between the two films remains speculative rather than confirmed canon. The Matrix and The Wizard of Oz. Cypher's famous line about Dorothy in Kansas isn't just a pop culture reference. It's foreshadowing his betrayal. When Neo takes the red pill in The Matrix in 1999, Cypher, played by Joe Pantoliano, says, "Buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy, because Kansas is going bye-bye." On the surface, this appears to be a simple reference to The Wizard of Oz in 1939. However, the reference foreshadows Cypher's treachery. Morpheus's mission is associated with Alice in Wonderland, questioning reality and choosing to go deeper, while The Wizard of Oz is about Dorothy desperately wanting to return home to Kansas. Cypher's use of a Wizard of Oz reference instead of Alice in Wonderland subtly reveals his opposition to Morpheus's beliefs and his desire to return to the Matrix, his Kansas. Dorothy never chose to go to Oz, while Alice chose to follow the White Rabbit, reflecting Cypher's regret about taking the red pill. This detail becomes clear during Cypher's dinner scene with Agent Smith, where he explicitly asks to be reinserted into the Matrix, a clever literary reference that operates on two levels, entertaining fans of The Wizard of Oz while subtly telegraphing a major plot twist for attentive viewers. Total Recall and Minority Report. Steven Spielberg's Minority Report was considered as a potential sequel to Total Recall before a studio bankruptcy changed cinema history. In the 1990s, Philip K. Dick's short story, The Minority Report, from 1956, was optioned for a film to be directed by Paul Verhoeven, director of Total Recall in 1990. Verhoeven noted the thematic connections between the Philip K. Dick stories and discussed them as potential companion pieces. We Can Remember It For You Wholesale was adapted into Total Recall. However, Carol Co. Pictures, the production company, went bankrupt in 1995 before production could begin. The project was eventually revived as a standalone film directed by Steven Spielberg in 2002, starring Tom Cruise. Both films share Philip K. Dick's themes of memory manipulation, identity, and dystopian futures. This alternate timeline would have created a shared Philip K. Dick cinematic universe decades before shared universes became the norm, potentially changing the landscape of sci-fi cinema. Back to the Future and Dr. Strangelove. Marty McFly's amplifier contains a code that matches one from Stanley Kubrick's Cold War satire, suggesting a possible homage. In Doc Brown's laboratory in Back to the Future in 1985, Marty plugs his guitar into an amplifier. The amplifier bears the inscription CRM-114. CRM-114 is a code that appears in Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove in 1964, specifically the communication system that fails to recall the bombers, suggesting a possible reference. Kubrick also used CRM-114 in 2001, A Space Odyssey, in 1968, as a designation on spacecraft equipment. Film scholars have noted Kubrick's repeated use of CRM-114 across films, suggesting it may be an internal linking motif. The appearance of CRM-114 in Back to the Future reinforces the intertextual nature of sci-fi and Kubrick's influence on the genre. A subtle nod showing how sci-fi filmmakers create a web of references, with symbols and codes being recycled across decades and genres. Moon and Mute. Duncan Jones's Berlin-set thriller is a spiritual sequel to his moon-based sci-fi debut, with a cameo revealing the fate of Sam Bell years after his escape. In Mute, in 2018, Sam Rockwell reprises his role as Sam Bell from Moon in 2009 in a cameo appearance on a television screen. The scene shows Sam Bell confronting Lunar Industries, the company that cloned him and kept him on the moon base. Mute takes place in a futuristic Berlin, while Moon is set on a lunar mining base, but both exist in the same timeline. Jones had originally planned for Sam Rockwell to star in Mute, but made Moon first when that fell through. Jones told Entertainment Weekly that Free the Sams campaign posters appear in the background, suggesting Sam Bell became a folk hero. Jones described Mute as a spiritual sequel to Moon, and has expressed interest in a potential third film that could further connect the stories. Both films explore themes of corporate exploitation, identity, and what it means to be human. The cameo suggests what happened to Sam Bell after Moon, establishing these films in a shared timeline and providing closure for fans. If you found this interesting, consider subscribing so you catch every new video. Thanks for watching.